this two-part webinar series, we'll look at why cloud data migrations are so dreaded and what you can do to address them. Part 1. 94% of businesses today are looking at a multi-cloud model. It is no surprise then that accelerating cloud data migrations is a key business priority. But we all know that data migrations can be costly, complex, and error-prone. Let us look at the 7 main reasons why cloud data migrations fail, starting with reason number 7. Cloud data migrations often have a lot of sunk costs. There are two approaches you can take when you're migrating data to the cloud. You can either use free tools like Robocopy or rsync, but then IT has to spend a lot of time babysitting these tools, or you can buy a point data migration solution, which results in throwaway costs because all it does is data migrations. So either way, data migrations often have a lot of sunk costs. Number 6, preserving data integrity when you're migrating data to the cloud is very difficult because, first of all, you have to ensure that all the access control and the metadata goes properly and is migrated over to the new environment. And secondly, you have to handle issues like failures when you're moving data to the cloud. So handling all of these manually becomes very, very difficult. Are you performing an integrity check like an MD5 checksum on every file? Are you handling for incompatibilities between your source and destination storage and how they handle permissions? All of this has to be taken into account. So preserving data integrity during data migrations can be very, very tricky. Number 5, data migrations take up a lot of time, as you can already see. Particularly when you're migrating to the cloud and you have to take into consideration latencies over a WAN. And when you're looking at unstructured file and object data, you might have a mix of large files and small files, deep directories and shallow directories, thousands of shares, billions of files. How do you make sure that all of this is migrated over correctly? This can all be very, very time consuming. The number 4 reasons data migrations end up failing is because there is a lot of downtime that you have to consider. There are really two kinds of downtime you have to look at. The first is an impact on users and applications by going from one type of environment to another. So when you're looking at an on-premises file-based storage environment and users and applications are accessing files and you're moving it to the cloud, if you're moving to an object environment in the cloud, that is not only changing from on-premise to cloud, but you're also changing protocols, and you have to consider how users and applications will now be able to access this data. The second thing that you have to look at is what happens with every migration, which is when you migrate it over, you have to do a cutover so users know to look for the data in the new place. How long does this cutover take? Typically, you want cutover to last only a few hours. So considering the downtime impact of a data migration is extremely important, and if not planned for correctly, it can lead to tremendous disruption. We have already talked about many choices you can have when you're migrating data. You can go from a file storage to another file storage, or you can go from a file storage to an object storage, or object storage to object storage. All of this gets even more tricky when you go to the cloud because many of the public clouds today offer a variety of file and object storage classes. Some are offered by the cloud vendor themselves, and some are offered by third parties. Each of these classes has its own mix of performance and costs, and you have to consider all of this when picking the right cloud storage options. It might even be that your data should start out in a file storage in the cloud, but should move to an object store like an S3 storage and then move down to something like Glacier. So picking the right cloud storage option at the right time is extremely important, not only to give you the best performance, but also to give you the best costs. And this can be very tricky. Less than 20% of people actually use the right cloud storage option on their data because of how difficult this is. Number 2, Planning your data migration correctly is extremely important, but this can be very hard because IT often does the cloud data migrations, but IT doesn't know much about the data that they're managing because the data is created by users and applications. So flying blind without any analytics or insight into the data makes it very hard for IT to actually plan a data migration correctly. All of this results in either cost overruns or time overruns, or quite often both. And so the cost and complexity of migrations often comes from the lack of sufficient planning, which comes from the lack of sufficient visibility. But the number one reason data migrations end up failing is because quite often cloud data migrations are seen as a one time task. So they're seen as one offs and there's no continuity or continued business knowledge. Data migration should be seen as a part of an ongoing data management process, not just a one off. By treating it as a one off, each migration is approached differently and each migration is ad hoc, and it leads to all the other problems that we've already discussed. So the real reason data migrations are very costly, complex, time consuming, error prone is because every migration is treated as an ad hoc, one off project instead of being seen as a part of a data management lifecycle. Now that you understand the 7 reasons why data migrations fail, particularly cloud data migrations, you can watch the second part of this series on how you can solve these 7 problems using the Komprise Intelligent Data Management solution.